Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. The glossy elevator doors of Grayson Enterprises reflected Harper Cole's determined expression as she adjusted her navy blazer one last time. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, "Baby girl, sometimes the hardest fights are the ones we choose for ourselves." At 28, those words had become her armor, especially on days like today when she had to face people who thought everything and everyone had a price tag. The social services budget cuts had hit her department hard. 3 months of sleepless nights, endless grant applications, and desperate fundraising hadn't been enough. The community center project she'd poured her heart into was hanging by a thread, and with it, the futures of dozens of children who needed a safe space after school. The elevator chimed at the 45th floor, and Harper stepped into a world that screamed old money and new power. The marble floors gleamed like mirrors, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a vertigo-inducing view of the Brooklyn Bridge in the distance. Her home borough looked different from up here, smaller, more distant, like a painting rather than the vibrant, breathing neighborhood where she'd grown up. Miss Cole, a sleek assistant with perfect posture, approached her. "Mr. Grayson, we'll see you now." Following the assistant through a maze of glass and steel, Harper caught fragments of her reflection. Her corkscrew curls were perfectly arranged in a professional updo, and her minimal makeup highlighted her warm brown eyes and high cheekbones. She looked put together, confident everything she needed to be to convince one more potential donor to save her project. The assistant opened a heavy wooden door, and Harper's heart skipped a beat. Gideon Grayson stood at the window, his tall frame cutting an imposing silhouette against the Manhattan skyline. At 6, he dominated the space, not just physically, but with an aura of absolute control. When he turned, his gray-blue eyes assessed her with the precision of a master chess player, evaluating his next move. "Miss Cole," his voice was deep, cultured, with just enough warmth to be polite, but not enough to be welcoming. "Please have a seat." The Tom Ford Oud wood cologne reached her before she'd taken 3 steps into the room. It was sophisticated, expensive, and somehow both inviting and intimidating, just like its wearer. Harper took the offered seat, noting how his custom Tom Ford suit matched the steely determination in his eyes. "Mr. Grayson, thank you for meeting with me. I understand your time is valuable." $5 million. Harper blinked, her carefully prepared pitch dying on her lips. "I'm sorry?" Gideon Grayson walked around his massive desk, each movement deliberate and graceful. He unbuttoned his suit jacket, a nervous tell she'd noticed many times in the future, and sat down across from her. $5 million, he repeated, his voice steady. "That's my offer. Not for your community center project, Miss Cole. For you." The room suddenly felt too warm, too small. Harper's fingers tightened on her portfolio. "I don't understand." "It's quite simple." He leaned back, studying her with those unnerving eyes. "I need a companion for the Metropolitan Museum's annual gala next month, someone intelligent, beautiful, and most importantly, genuine. Someone who won't raise eyebrows or question marks. Among my more traditional investors," a laugh bubbled up in Harper's throat, sharp, incredulous. "Mr. Grayson, I'm a social worker, not an escort." "I'm not looking for an escort." His expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance? Interest? "I'm looking for a business arrangement. One evening, no romantic expectations, no strings attached, just your presence, your conversation, and your discretion." Harper stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I came here to discuss funding for a youth program that could change lives, not to—" $5 million could change a lot of lives, Miss Cole." His voice was soft now, almost hypnotic. "How many children could your center help with that kind of funding? How many families could benefit all for one evening of your time?" The worst part was, he was right. $5 million would not only save her current project, but could fund expansion plans she'd only dreamed about: after-school programs, counseling services, job training for parents, everything she'd fought for over the past 5 years. "Why me?" The question came out before she could stop it. Gideon stood, walking to a cabinet where a crystal decanter caught the afternoon light. "Because you're real." He poured himself a measure of amber liquid. "My world is full of people playing parts, Miss Cole. You walk in here straight from the trenches of social work, wearing your convictions like armor. That kind of authenticity is rare and expensive, apparently." The words tasted bitter in her mouth. He smiled then, a small, almost imperceptible curve of his lips. "Everything has a price. The question is whether we're willing to pay it." He gestured to the decanter. "You drink?" "No, thank you." Harper gathered her belongings, trying to ignore how her hands shook slightly. "Mr. Grayson, I appreciate your unique offer, but I'm afraid I'll have to decline." She was almost at the door when his voice stopped her. "The children whose futures you're fighting for, do they care about your pride, Miss Cole?" Harper's hand froze on the doorknob. The scent of her Coco Mademoiselle perfume mingled with his oud wood in the air between them, creating an oddly intimate atmosphere she hadn't noticed before. "Think about it," he continued. "You have until Friday to decide. After that, I'll need to make other arrangements." She didn't turn around, didn't trust herself to look at him again. "Goodbye, Mr. Grayson." The door closed behind her with a soft click, but Harper's heart thundered in her chest all the way down to the lobby. Outside, the spring air hit her face like a wake-up call. She walked 3 blocks before her legs stopped shaking enough to hail a cab. That evening, in her small Brooklyn apartment, Harper sat at her window seat, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and pink. Her mother's old jazz collection played softly in the background, Miles Davis Tonight, because she needed something to soothe her soul. She pulled out her worn leather journal, a habit she'd maintained since college. The blank page stared back at her, waiting for her to make sense of the day's events. $5 million, she whispered to the empty room, the numbers feeling surreal on her tongue. Pride or purpose? Principles or pragmatism? The questions swirled in her mind as she watched the city lights blink to life one by one, like stars being born in an urban sky. She had until Friday to decide, but somewhere deep inside, past all her carefully constructed walls of principle and propriety, Harper already knew what her answer would be. The question wasn't whether she would accept Gideon Grayson's offer. The question was what it would cost her, not in dollars, but in pieces of her soul. Thunder rolled across the Brooklyn sky as Harper stared at her laptop screen, the budget spreadsheet blurring before her tired eyes. 3 days had passed since Gideon Grayson's proposition, and she'd buried herself in work, trying to find alternative solutions. But the numbers didn't lie. Without major funding, the community center would never open its doors. A knock on her office door startled her. "Come in," she called, quickly wiping away a stray tear. "Girl, you look like you haven't slept in days." Lila Torres, her closest friend and fellow social worker, walked in carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. Her bright yellow dress contrasted sharply with the gloomy weather outside. "Spill it." "What's eating you?" Harper accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." Lila perched on the edge of the desk, her dark eyes concerned. "This is about the Grayson meeting. Did that Silver Spoon CEO shut us down?" "Not exactly." Harper took a deep breath, the coffee warming her hands. "He offered me $5 million. Lila's eyebrows shot up. "That's amazing. Why do you look like someone died?" "Because it's not for the center, at least. Not directly." Harper set down her cup and stood, pacing to the window. Below, children played basketball in the community court, undeterred by the threatening weather. "He wants me to be his date for some fancy gala." "Hold up." Lila's coffee cup clattered against the desk. "Gideon Grayson, the most eligible bachelor in New York, offered you $5 million to be his arm candy. It's not like that. He says it's strictly business. He needs someone genuine to impress his investors." Harper turned back to her friend. "But it feels wrong, Lila. Like I'm selling myself. Or like you're being smart and using his privilege to help our kids." Lila's voice softened. "You remember Mateo, the kid who aged out of foster care last year?" Harper nodded. Mateo had been one of their success stories, now attending community college. "He told me once that pride doesn't keep you warm at night. Sometimes we have to play the game to change it." Before Harper could respond, her phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Harper Cole speaking. "Miss Cole." Gideon's deep voice sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "I trust you've had time to consider my offer." She caught her reflection in the window, tired eyes, determined set of her jaw. "I have. And I have conditions." A pause, then a low chuckle. "I expected nothing less. Dinner tonight, 8:00 Le Bernardin. We can discuss terms." "Mr. Grayson, Gideon, please. If we're going to be seen together, we should at least be on first-name terms." After hanging up, Harper turned to find Lila grinning. Girl, you better let me help you get ready. 6 hours later, Harper stepped into Le Bernardin, her heart racing beneath her favorite navy cocktail dress. The maitre d' led her through the elegant restaurant to a private dining room where Gideon waited. He stood as she entered, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes: appreciation, perhaps, or surprise. His Tom Ford suit was impeccable as always, but tonight there was something different about him, a hint of vulnerability beneath the polished exterior. "You look stunning," he said simply, pulling out her chair. "Thank you." She sat, careful to maintain her composure. "Shall we discuss terms?" "Always straight to business." He smiled, pouring her a glass of wine. "Very well. Your conditions?" "The money goes directly to the center through proper legal channels. I want everything transparent and above board." "Done." He didn't even hesitate. "What else?" "No physical contact beyond what's necessary for appearances. No implications of anything intimate, naturally." His gray-blue eyes held hers. "Although you should know there might be dancing at the gala. I can handle a waltz, Mr. Grayson." "Gideon," he corrected gently. "And I'm sure you can handle many things, Harper. That's precisely why we're here." The waiter arrived with their first course, and Harper used the interruption to gather her thoughts. The food was exquisite, tender scallops with delicate truffle sauce, but she barely tasted it. "Gideon, there's something else you should know," he said after a while. "Julian Pierce will be at the gala. Should I know that name? He's my chief competitor, brilliant, charming, and utterly ruthless." Gideon's jaw tightened. "He has a habit of taking things that interest me." "I'm not a thing to be taken, Gideon." His eyes softened fractionally. "No, you're not. But Julian won't see it that way. He'll see you as a way to get to me. Then why invite this complication? Surely there are other events. Because this gala is where decisions are made, alliances are formed. The future of my company could depend on the impression we make." The weight of his words settled over her. This wasn't just about appearance. It was about power, influence, and games she didn't fully understand. "Tell me about him," she said finally. "Imagine a snake wearing Dior Sauvage and $1 million smile. He'll try to charm you, to make you doubt everything about me in this arrangement. You don't trust me? I don't trust him." Gideon leaned forward, his cologne teasing her senses. "Julian has a talent for finding people's weaknesses. And right now, Harper, you might be mine." The admission hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to explore. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know what you're walking into." He sat back, signaling for another bottle of wine. "And because I suspect you're like me, you prefer to face your battles with open eyes." Later that night, as her taxi wound through the rain-slick streets of Brooklyn, Harper's mind raced. She had agreed to his terms, signed the contracts he'd somehow had ready. Everything was legal, clear, protected by confidentiality agreements that would make Fort Knox look accessible. But it wasn't the contract that kept her awake that night. It was the way Gideon's mask had slipped, just for a moment, when he'd helped her with her coat, the gentle brush of his fingers against her shoulder, the subtle intake of breath when she'd turned to thank him. In her tiny apartment, Harper kicked off her heels and pulled out her journal. The pages were filling up with questions she couldn't answer, feelings she couldn't name. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sweet dreams, Miss Cole. The game begins tomorrow. JP." Harper stared at the message, her pulse quickening. Julian Pierce. How had he gotten her number? More importantly, why was he already making moves in a game? She barely understood. She thought of Gideon's warning, of the children who needed the community center, of the thin line she was walking between pragmatism and principle. Outside, the storm finally broke, rain hammering against her windows like nature's own warning. But Harper had made her choice. Now she just had to survive the consequences. She texted back a single word: "Good night." Let Julian Pierce play his games. She had $5 million reasons to stay focused and one man's gray-blue eyes to avoid getting lost in. Tomorrow, she would start learning the rules of their dangerous game. Tonight, she would dream of children's laughter in a community center that was no longer just a fantasy, and maybe, just maybe, of the way Gideon Grayson looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. "Hold still," Lila insisted, adjusting the hem of the midnight blue gown that had arrived at Harper's apartment that morning. The dress was a masterpiece of subtle elegance, fitted through the bodice before flowing into a gentle sweep of fabric that moved like water when she walked. "Girl, I don't care what you say about this being just business. The man has taste." Harper studied her reflection in the full-length mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The dress fit perfectly, as if it had been crafted specifically for her curves. A note had accompanied the delivery. For tonight's practice, run G, practice run. The words still made her stomach twist. Gideon had insisted they attend a smaller charity dinner before the gala to establish their dynamic in public. 3 days of intensive coaching on upper-class social protocols had left her head spinning with rules about everything from wine selection to conversation topics. "You're overthinking again," Lila observed, arranging Harper's curls into an elegant updo. "I can see it in your eyes. I feel like I'm preparing for an undercover mission, not a dinner." Harper touched the delicate diamond earrings, another delivery from Gideon. "What if I mess this up?" "You won't." Lila stepped back, admiring her handiwork. "Just remember what your mama always said. Hold your head high, and let them wonder what you know that they don't." A soft knock interrupted them. Gideon's driver was right on time. The restaurant, an exclusive spot in Upper Manhattan, glowed with warmth against the twilight sky. Gideon waited at the entrance, his tall frame impossibly elegant in a black suit that probably cost more than Harper's annual salary. When he saw her, something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes that made her breath catch. "You look," he paused, searching for words. "Perfect. Thank you." She accepted his offered arm, noting how naturally they fit together. "Though I still think this practice dinner is excessive. In my world, nothing is excessive when it comes to preparation." He led her inside, his hand warm against her lower back. "Besides, I thought you might appreciate a trial run before throwing you to the wolves." The maître guided them to a private corner table, with a view of both the restaurant and the city beyond. Gideon pulled out her chair with practiced grace, and Harper caught a whiff of his cologne, that now familiar scent that somehow made her feel both alert and at ease. "Wine?" he offered, studying the list. "You choose. Apparently, that's more appropriate for our narrative." A small smile played at his lips. "You're a quick study. I have a good teacher." She met his gaze. "Though I'm still not clear on all the rules of engagement." "Simple." He ordered a bottle of Bordeaux with perfect pronunciation. "We've been dating quietly for 3 months. Met through mutual friends at a charity event. Keep it vague but believable. And when people ask about my work, tell the truth." His eyes held hers. "Your passion for social work is exactly what makes you valuable in this charade. These people donate millions to feel good about themselves. Show them what real impact looks like." The wine arrived, and Gideon went through the tasting ritual with practiced ease. Harper watched his hands strong, elegant, always in control, until they weren't. "He's here," Gideon said quietly, his fingers tightening almost imperceptibly on his glass. Harper didn't need to ask who. The shift in energy was palpable as Julian Pierce entered the restaurant. He moved like a man who owned every room he walked into, his casual confidence a striking contrast to Gideon's controlled power. "Well, well." Julian's voice was smooth as aged whiskey as he approached their table. Gideon Grayson breaking his own rules about mixing business with pleasure. "Julian." Gideon's tone could have frozen champagne. "I wasn't aware you frequented this establishment. I follow interesting opportunities." Julian's green eyes fixed on Harper, gleaming with predatory interest. "And you must be the lovely Miss Cole. Your reputation precedes you, does it?" Harper kept her voice cool. "Funny, I wasn't aware social workers had reputations in your circles." Julian laughed, genuine delight dancing in his eyes. "Oh, I like her, Gideon. No wonder you're breaking all your careful rules." He pulled a business card from his jacket, Dior, not Tom Ford, and placed it beside her wine glass. "When you tire of playing pretend with him, call me. I have some ideas about your community center that might interest you." "That won't be necessary," Gideon cut in, but Julian was already turning away. "Enjoy your evening, lovebirds." He paused, that dangerous smile still in place. "And Gideon, about the Tokyo deal better. Check your numbers again." They watched him weave through the restaurant, stopping to charm various diners with practiced ease. The scent of his Dior Sauvage lingered, clashing with Gideon's Oud Wood like competing claims to territory. "What did he mean about Tokyo?" Harper asked quietly. Gideon's jaw clenched. "Nothing you need to worry about. If it affects our arrangement, it doesn't." He took a long sip of wine. "Julian enjoys playing games. Don't let him get into your head." But he was already there, wasn't he? His card seemed to burn against the white tablecloth, a temptation. and a threat wrapped in expensive paper. The rest of dinner passed in a carefully orchestrated dance of small talk and subtle touches. Gideon's hand would brush hers when reaching for the wine. His fingers would ghost against her back when helping her stand. Each contact sent little sparks of electricity through her skin, and Harper couldn't tell if it was part of the act or something more dangerous. Later, in his car, the city lights painted patterns across their faces. "You did well tonight," Gideon said softly, even with Julian's interruption. "Is it always like this, everyone watching, measuring, looking for weaknesses?" "Yes." He turned to face her, his profile sharp against the night. Having second thoughts? No. The answer came too quickly, too firmly. "The center needs this money. I can handle your world for a few weeks." "Can you?" His voice was low, intimate in the dark car. "Because Julian was right about one thing, I am breaking my rules with you." "Why?" The car stopped in front of her building, but neither moved to leave. Rain had started falling, drops racing down the windows like tears. "Because sometimes the most valuable things are the ones we never meant to acquire." He reached out, brushing a loose curl from her cheek. The touch lingered, warm against her skin. "Good night, Harper." She watched his car disappear into the Brooklyn night, her heart racing beneath the borrowed diamonds and designer dress. Inside her apartment, she carefully hung up the gown and changed into her favorite oversized NYU sweatshirt. The business card sat on her kitchen counter, elegant black letters seeming to mock her. Julian's words echoed in her mind, "When you tire of playing pretend." But that was the problem, wasn't it? With every passing moment, this felt less like pretend and more like something terrifyingly real. Harper opened her journal, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself touching her cheek, where Gideon's fingers had been, remembering the way his eyes had darkened. When Julian approached, the protective shift of his body toward hers, her phone buzzed with a text, "Sweet dreams, Miss Cole. You looked ravishing in blue. JP." Seconds later, another message, "Thank you for tonight. The gala won't know what hit them." Gee, 2 men, 2 messages, 2 very different games being played. And somewhere in the middle, Harper was starting to forget the rules she'd so carefully set for herself. She closed her journal without writing a word. Sometimes silence said more than any confession could. The Metropolitan Museum of Art glowed like a palace of dreams against the Manhattan skyline. Harper stood at the top of the grand staircase, her heart thundering beneath the custom Oscar de la Renta gown Gideon had sent over. The dress was a masterpiece in deep burgundy, with intricate beading that caught the light with every movement. Her curls were swept up elegantly, diamond drops at her ears catching the warm light. "Breathe," Gideon murmured beside her, his hand warm against her lower back. "You look stunning." She turned to study him, immaculate in his tuxedo, the subtle platinum cufflinks catching the light. But something was off. His jaw was too tight, his shoulders too tense. "The Tokyo deal," she whispered. A muscle twitched in his cheek. Let's just say Julian's warning wasn't entirely baseless. Before she could press further, they were swept into the gala. The great hall had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale, with crystal chandeliers casting golden light over New York's elite. The air was thick with expensive perfumes, power plays, and secrets. Gideon, an elegant woman in her 60s, approached, dripping in family diamonds. "You've been holding out on us, darling." "Who is this enchanting creature?" "Mrs. Langston." Gideon's smile was perfect, practiced. "Allow me to introduce Harper Cole." Harper, Eleanor Langston, sits on the board of several major charitable foundations. Harper felt the woman's shrewd assessment behind her social smile. This was it, the first test. "I understand you work in social services?" Mrs. Langston's tone carried a hint of surprise. "Yes, I do." Harper lifted her chin slightly. "Currently, I'm developing a comprehensive community center project in Brooklyn. We're focusing on after-school programs, job training for parents, and mental health support." Miss S. Langston's eyes sharpened with interest. "Mental health support? That's become quite a pressing issue, hasn't it? Tell me more." For the next 20 minutes, Harper found herself in an intense discussion about community intervention strategies. She could feel Gideon watching her, pride, and something else flickering in his eyes. "Magnificent, isn't she?" A familiar voice cut through their conversation. Julian Pierce appeared as if conjured, devastating in a midnight blue tuxedo. "Mrs. Langston, I hope you don't mind if I borrow this vision for a dance." Before anyone could object, Julian had swept Harper onto the dance floor. his Dior Sauvage cologne wrapping around her like a seductive warning. "You clean up nicely, Miss Cole." His hand was firm on her waist as they moved to the waltz, though I suspect our friend Gideon had something to do with that. "What do you want, Mr. Pierce? Direct. I like that." His green eyes glittered. "What if I told you I could offer your center twice what Gideon's offering, no strings attached, no fake dating required?" Harper's step faltered slightly. "Why would you do that?" "Because watching Gideon lose something he wants would be worth every penny." Julian's smile was razor sharp. "You see, I know something about the Tokyo deal that's going to destroy him. By this time next week, Grayson Enterprises will be in freefall, and you'll be collateral damage." "You're lying." "Am I?" He spun her elegantly, bringing her closer. "Check your phone. I just sent you proof." The music ended, and Julian bowed with exaggerated courtesy. "Think about it, beautiful. Tick-tock." Harper made her way to the ladies' room, her hands shaking as she checked her phone. The documents Julian had sent made her blood run cold. Internal memos, financial projections, all pointing to a massive fraud in Grayson Enterprises' Tokyo expansion. When she emerged, Gideon was waiting. "Everything all right? We need to talk." She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a quiet alcove. "The Tokyo deal, there's something wrong with the numbers, isn't there?" His face went still. "What did Julian tell you?" "He showed me documents, Gideon. If this is true, it's not what you think." He ran a hand through his hair, that nervous tell she'd come to recognize. "The discrepancy in the numbers. I've been trying to track down where the leak is coming from. Someone inside my company is working with Julian. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wasn't relevant to our arrangement." His voice turned cold. "Unless you're considering Julian's offer." The accusation stung. "Don't you dare. I agreed to this because I believed in what the money could do for my kids. But if that money comes from fraud..." Gideon stepped closer, his cologne surrounding her. "Everything I've built, everything I am, is based on one principle. I don't cheat. Julian's the one playing games." Their eyes locked, electricity crackling in the small space between them. For a moment, Harper thought he might kiss her, wanted him to kiss her, despite everything. A throat cleared behind them. They turned to find Miss S. Langston watching with knowing eyes. "Sorry to interrupt, dear, but Gideon, the director, is asking for you." "Something about the Tokyo announcement." Gideon's face hardened. "Of course." "Harper, will you go?" She forced a smile. "I'll be fine." But as she watched him walk away, Julian's words echoed in her mind, collateral damage. The next hour passed in a blur of forced smiles and careful conversations. Harper found herself on the balcony, needing air, when a commotion erupted inside. Through the glass doors, she saw Gideon and Julian in what appeared to be a heated discussion, surrounded by concerned-looking board members. Her phone buzzed. "Time's up. Beautiful. Watch the fireworks." JP seconds later, every phone in the room seemed to chime at once. The Tokyo documents had been leaked to the press. Harper watched in horror as Gideon's world began to crumble in real time. His face was a mask of controlled fury as he spoke with board members, his hands clenched at his sides. When their eyes met across the room, she saw something she'd never expected to see in Gideon Grayson's face: fear. Not of the scandal, not of the financial implications, but of losing her. She made her decision in that moment. To hell with contracts and arrangements. This wasn't about money anymore. Harper Cole was going to save Gideon Grayson, whether he wanted her help or not. Moving through the crowd, she caught Julian's eye. He raised his champagne glass in a mock toast, that predatory smile still in place. Let him play his games. She had learned from the best. The night wasn't over yet, and neither was she. Dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed obscenely beautiful, given the chaos of the past 12 hours. Harper hadn't slept. Her Oscar de la Renta gown lay draped over a chair in Gideon's penthouse office, replaced by clothes from the emergency kit. Lila had insisted she keep at work black pants and a simple blouse that felt like armor in this glass and steel fortress. "Here." Gideon handed her a fresh cup of coffee, his tie loosened, jacket discarded hours ago. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but his voice remained steady. "The board meeting starts in an hour. Have you looked at the files I found?" Harper gestured to her laptop, where she'd spent the night analyzing years of financial records. Her social work background had given her an unexpected advantage. She was used to finding patterns in chaos, following paper trails that others might miss. "Yes." He leaned against his desk, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "But I still don't understand why you're doing this." The contract is void now. The scandal killed any chance of the gala serving its purpose. Harper set down her coffee, meeting his tired eyes. Do you really think that's why I'm here? Something flickered across his face: vulnerability, wonder, fear. Why are you here, Harper? Before she could answer, his office door burst open. A team of lawyers and executives poured in, led by Victor Ramsey, Grayson Enterprises' chief financial officer. His face was ashen. The press is having a field day, Victor announced, tossing a tablet onto the desk. Headlines screamed about fraud and corruption. Julian Pierce is giving a statement in an hour. Of course he is. Gideon's voice was ice. He orchestrated this whole thing. I found something. Harper stood, pulling up files on the main screen. The Tokyo numbers don't add up, but not in the way Julian's documents suggest. Look at these transactions. The room fell silent as she walked them through her discovery. Hundreds of tiny discrepancies, all pointing to one conclusion. Someone has been manipulating the books long before the Tokyo deal. These patterns, she explained, highlighting specific entries, they're similar to what we see in financial abuse cases. Someone's been siphoning funds, but they're making it look like systematic fraud to tank the company's reputation. Victor's face went from ashen to gray. The timestamps on these transactions, they all happened during system maintenance windows, when only senior IT and financial officers would have access. Gideon finished, his eyes narrowing. Like you, Victor. The CFO lunged for the door, but Gideon was faster. In seconds, security had Victor restrained. You were working with Julian. It wasn't a question. How long? You don't understand, Victor spat. Pierce offered me twice my salary, plus a percentage of Grayson Enterprises when he took over. All I had to do was plant the evidence. Harper watched Gideon's face, seeing the betrayal cut deep. These weren't just employees. These were people he'd trusted, people he'd built his empire with. Get him out of here, Gideon ordered, and call our friends at the SEC. They'll want to see this. As the room cleared, exhaustion hit Harper like a wave. She'd been running on adrenaline and coffee, driven by something she wasn't ready to name. You're remarkable. Gideon's voice was soft behind her. I have a team of financial analysts who missed what you found in one night. I'm good at seeing patterns. In my work, missing details can mean a child stays in a dangerous situation. She turned to face him. But you still haven't answered my question from the gala. Why didn't you tell me about the Tokyo situation? He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne faded now, but still distinctly him. Because I've spent my entire life keeping people at arm's length. It's safer that way. No attachments, no vulnerabilities. How's that working out for you? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Not as well as I'd hoped, especially since a certain social worker walked into my office and turned everything upside down. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the subtle gold threads in his hair. Harper was suddenly very aware of how close they were standing, of the electricity that seemed to crackle in the air between them. Gideon, she started, but his phone buzzed a news alert. Julian Pierce was on live TV, looking polished and concerned as he spoke about troubling allegations at Grayson Enterprises. That snake, Gideon's jaw clenched. He's trying to get ahead of the story. Then let's beat him at his own game. Harper pulled up her phone, dialing a familiar number. Lila, remember that journalist you dated last summer? The one at the Wall Street Journal? We need a favor. Within hours, the true story broke evidence of Victor's embezzlement, his connection to Pierce Industries, the elaborate scheme to destabilize Grayson Enterprises. It all came to light. Julian's carefully crafted press conference backfired, spectacularly. By sunset, Grayson Enterprises stock had stabilized. The board issued a statement of full confidence in Gideon's leadership, and the Tokyo deal was safe. Harper stood at the office windows, watching the city lights blink to life. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind was still racing. Have dinner with me, Gideon said suddenly. She turned, surprised. What? Not as part of any contract, not for show. He stepped closer, and this time there was no hesitation in his voice. Have dinner with me, because I want to know you, the real you, not the version I tried to buy. I'm still wearing yesterday's makeup. I haven't slept in 36 hours, and I'm pretty sure my hair is defying gravity at this point. You're beautiful. The words were simple, sincere. And you saved everything I've built. Let me thank you properly. I didn't do it for thanks, I know. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. That's exactly why I'm asking. Before she could answer, Her phone chimed with a text. "This isn't over, beautiful. Round 1 goes to you, but I play the long game. JP." Gideon read the message over her shoulder, his grip tightening on her hand. "He won't stop." "Good." Harper met his surprised look with a smile. "Because neither will we." "We?" "Yes, we." She squeezed his hand. "But first, I need a shower, clean clothes, and about 12 hours of sleep. After that, dinner sounds perfect." He laughed a real laugh, warm and unguarded. "I can work with that." As they rode the elevator down to his waiting car, Harper thought about how much had changed in just a few days. She'd walked into this building, hoping to save her community center. Instead, she'd found herself entangled in corporate intrigue, multi-million-dollar scandals, and something that felt dangerously like falling in love. Her phone buzzed again. "Lila, this time." "Girl, you're all over the news. Call me ASAP. P.S. Does this mean you get to keep the designer dresses?" Harper smiled, leaning slightly against Gideon's solid warmth beside her. The dresses were the least interesting thing she'd gotten out of this arrangement, but that was a story for another day. "You can't be serious." Harper stared at the magazine cover displayed on her office computer. The photo showed her and Gideon leaving his office building the morning after the gala, his hand protectively at her back. The headline read, "Love Conquers Wall Street. The Romance Behind Grayson Enterprises' Salvation." Lila leaned over her shoulder, grinning. "Girl, you look good for someone who hadn't slept in 36 hours. But more importantly, Spill. It's been 2 weeks since the scandal. What's really going on with you and Mr. Tall, rich, and handsome?" Harper closed the browser but couldn't hide her smile. The past 2 weeks had been unexpected. After that first real dinner, where they talked for hours about everything from their childhoods to their dreams, something had shifted between them. The pretense had fallen away, leaving something raw and genuine in its place. "We're taking things slow," she said. "Finally, learning who we are without contracts and corporate drama between us." "Slow?" Lila arched an eyebrow. "Is that why you've been coming to work glowing like a Christmas tree every morning?" Before Harper could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Gideon. "Free for lunch? There's something I need to show you." Her heart did a little flip. "Rain check on the interrogation?" she asked Lila. "Duty calls." "Oh, is that what we're calling it now?" Harper grabbed her bag, pointedly ignoring her friend's knowing smirk. Outside, Gideon's car waited at the curb, but he wasn't in it. Instead, his driver handed her an envelope containing an address in Brooklyn and a simple note, "Meet me there, G." The address led her to a rundown building a few blocks from her office. Yellow construction tape decorated the entrance, and the windows were covered in brown paper. Confusion settled in her stomach as she checked the address again. "What do you think?" Gideon's voice came from behind her. He wore a casual sweater and slacks today, his version of dressed down, but somehow looked even more handsome than in his usual suits. "About an abandoned building?" Her eyes narrowed. His eyes sparkled with something that looked suspiciously like excitement. "Look closer." Harper studied the building again, noting its location, the size, the potential. Realization hit her like a thunderbolt. "This is 3 blocks from the youth center," she breathed. "Perfect walking distance for after-school programs. The paperwork went through this morning." He pulled out a set of keys. "It's yours, or rather, it's the community center's. Consider it a proper investment in the future of Brooklyn's youth." Emotion closed her throat. This wasn't just a building. It was everything she dreamed of for her kids. "Gideon, I can't." "Yes, you can." He stepped closer, his cologne wrapping around her like a caress. "You saved my company, Harper. Let me help you build something too." She looked up at him, seeing past the powerful CEO to the man who'd been watching her, learning her dreams without her even realizing it. "This isn't because you feel obligated, is it? This is because He paused, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "Because you make me want to be better, do better." The kiss happened naturally, like breathing. His hands cradled her face as though she were precious, breakable. She tasted coffee and mint and possibility on his lips. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers. "Have dinner with me tonight," he murmured. "At my place. I want to show you something else. More surprises? Always." But fate, it seemed, had other plans. That afternoon, as Harper was reviewing renovation proposals for the new building, Lila burst into her office. "Turn on the news now." The headline made her blood run cold. "Breaking: Grayson Enterprises accused of systematic discrimination in housing projects." Her phone exploded with notifications, leaked emails, doctored statistics, and testimony from anonymous sources painted a damning picture of discriminatory practices in Grayson's real estate division. At the center of it all was a familiar face, Julian Pierce, expressing his deep concern about the allegations. "They thought this is nonsense," Harper muttered, scanning the reports. "I've seen Gideon's development plans. They're specifically designed to prevent gentrification and protect diverse communities." "Maybe," Lila said quietly, "but perception is reality in the media, and right now, the perception is ugly." Harper's phone rang Gideon's private line. "Turn on the news," she said immediately. "Already saw it." His voice was tight with controlled fury. "This is Julian's revenge play. He's trying to hit me where it hurts most, my reputation for ethical business practices. And my community center," Harper realized. If Grayson Enterprises is accused of discrimination, any connection to a social services project would taint everything you're trying to build. He exhaled slowly. "I'm so sorry, Harper. I never meant to drag you into this. Hey," she made her voice firm. "We're in this together, remember? Now, tell me what you need." A pause then. "Come to my office. Bring any documentation you have about Grayson's development projects in minority communities. We're going to fight back. On my way." She hung up and turned to Lila. "I need every contact you have in community organizing. If Julian wants to talk about discrimination, let's show him what real community support looks like." Already texting them, Lila's fingers flew over her phone. "But girl, be careful. Men like Julian Pierce don't play fair. Neither do I. Not anymore." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Harper coordinated with community leaders while Gideon's team assembled evidence of Grayson Enterprises' ethical development practices. But something nagged at her, a pattern in the leaked documents that felt familiar. She was reviewing security footage from Grayson's IT department when she saw it, a familiar face entering the building late at night, using Victor Ramsey's old security codes. "Found you," she whispered, freezing the frame on a woman she recognized from the gala, Serena Holt, Julian's executive assistant and Victor's former fiancée. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Dinner's canceled, I assume. Such a shame. I had something special planned. JP." Another message followed immediately. "Check your email. Beautiful. You might find tonight's headline interesting." Harper's hands shook as she opened her email. There it was, proof that Julian had orchestrated everything, including Victor's embezzlement. But attached was something else. Photos of her and Gideon from the past 2 weeks. Intimate moments they thought were private. A clear threat. She stared at her phone, anger replacing fear. Julian thought he could threaten her? He had no idea what she was capable of. "Game on," she texted back. Tonight's dinner might be canceled, but Harper had other plans. It was time to show Julian Pierce that he wasn't the only one who could play the long game. And this time, she had something he didn't, a man worth fighting for, and a cause worth protecting. Let him play his games. She had learned from the best. After all, the real question wasn't whether she would win. The question was what Julian would lose in the process. Serena Holt had expensive taste in coffee. Harper watched from a corner table at the upscale Manhattan cafe as Julian's executive assistant ordered her usual complicated drink. 3 weeks of surveillance had revealed Serena's predictable morning routine, a pattern that would finally prove useful. "Are you sure about this?" Lila's voice crackled through Harper's earpiece. Her friend was stationed outside, watching for any signs of Julian or his security. "No," Harper admitted quietly, "but it's our best shot." She'd spent the past week building to this moment, laying the groundwork with careful precision. The discrimination allegations against Grayson Enterprises had taken their toll. Stock prices were down, community leaders were asking questions, and the press was having a field day. But Harper had learned a few things about power plays. She stood, smoothing her navy pencil skirt, and approached Serena's table. "Mind if I join you?" Serena's perfectly maintained smile faltered. "Miss Cole, I don't think that your relationship with Victor Ramsey would ever come to light." Harper sat down, placing a thick envelope on the table. "Or that anyone would notice your late-night visits to Grayson Enterprises using his security codes." Color drained from Serena's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" Harper slid a photo across the table, security footage showing Serena entering the building the night before the Tokyo scandal broke. "Let's talk about loyalty, Serena, and what happens when we put it in the wrong people." Meanwhile, across town, Gideon was having a different kind of conversation. The Grayson Enterprises boardroom felt colder than usual as he faced his directors. "The discrimination allegations are baseless," he stated, his voice carrying the authority that had built his empire. "But perception matters. That's why I've called this meeting." He nodded to his assistant, who distributed thick folders to each board member. "These are the complete records of every Grayson development project, from the past 5 years' demographics, community impact studies, local business preservation initiatives, everything. This is comprehensive," Eleanor Langston noted, flipping through the pages. "But will it be enough to counter his narrative?" Gideon allowed himself a small smile. "That's just the beginning." Back at the cafe, Harper watched emotion flicker across Serena's face. "Julian will destroy me if I help you." "No." Harper leaned forward. "He'll destroy you when you're no longer useful, just like he did to Victor. Just like he's tried to do to everyone who trusts him." She pulled out her phone, showing Serena another set of photos, this time of Julian with various women, all bearing striking resemblances to Serena herself. "You're not the first assistant he's manipulated," Harper said softly. "And you won't be the last unless you help me stop him." Serena's hands trembled around her coffee cup. "What do you want?" "Everything: emails, recordings, proof of how he orchestrated both scandals. I know you keep records, Serena. Smart women always do." A tear slipped down Serena's cheek. "He'll come after me." "No, he won't." Harper reached across the table, squeezing the other woman's hand. "Because Gideon Grayson protects his people, even those who made mistakes." Hours later, Harper sat in Gideon's penthouse office, watching the sun set over Manhattan. The evidence Serena had provided was damning years of Julian's manipulations, all meticulously documented by an assistant he'd underestimated. "You're incredible." Gideon's voice was soft as he joined her at the window. "Dangerous, but incredible." She turned to face him, taking in the way his shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened after a day of battle. "So, having second thoughts about getting involved with me?" "Only about not doing it sooner." He stepped closer, his cologne wrapping around her like a caress. "The press conference is set for tomorrow morning. Once we release Serena's evidence, Julian's finished." Harper nodded. "But that's not what's really bothering you, is it?" Gideon was quiet for a moment, his gray-blue eyes troubled. "I watched you today, working to save my company, protect Serena, coordinate with the community leaders. You're extraordinary, Harper, and I can't help wondering if I deserve any of this." "Hey." She reached up, touching his face gently. "You're not the man Julian tried to paint you as. I've seen your heart, Gideon, in the community center, in how you treated Serena, in every quiet moment when you think no one's watching." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Stay with me tonight." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. This wasn't about strategy or scandal anymore. This was about them, the real them, stripped of all pretense. "We still have work to do," she whispered, but her resolve was weakening as he pulled her closer. "It can wait." His lips found her neck, and Harper's world narrowed to the sensation of his touch. Everything else can wait. But the universe had other plans. Her phone buzzed urgently, Lila's emergency tone. The message made her blood run cold. "Turn on the news now. Julian just announced his engagement to Serena." "No," Harper breathed, reaching for the remote. There it was, Julian and Serena on every channel, looking perfectly in love as he slipped a massive diamond ring on her finger. "A source close to the couple confirms this isn't a sudden decision," the reporter announced. "They've been secretly dating for months, making Miss Holt's testimony about Grayson Enterprises' ethical violations even more credible." Gideon's jaw clenched. He knew. Somehow, he knew we'd approached her. "No." Harper stared at the screen, watching Serena's performance. Something was off about her smile, her posture. This isn't a countermove. This is a cry for help. She grabbed her phone, dialing rapidly. "Lila, get me everything you can on Julian's previous relationships, plus any domestic incident reports. Restraining orders, everything." Serena is not just his pawn. She's his prisoner. Gideon watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Harper met his eyes, fierce determination burning in her chest, "that it's time to change the game. No more corporate tactics, no more polite power plays." She pulled up another number, Eleanor Langston's private line. "If Julian wants to make this personal, let's get personal. I know some domestic violence advocates who would be very interested in his pattern of behavior." "Harper," Gideon's voice was soft but urgent, "this could get dangerous." "I know." She squared her shoulders. "But I've spent my career protecting people from men like him. I'm not stopping now." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. What do you need from me? Your trust, and maybe your private security team. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You've had both for longer than you know. Outside, the city lights blinked, on one by one, like stars being born in an urban sky. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new strategies, new risks. But tonight, in this moment, Harper knew one thing with absolute certainty: love wasn't a weakness Julian could exploit. It was the strength that would finally bring him down. The manila folder landed on Harper's desk with a heavy thud. Lila stood over it, her usual smile replaced by grim determination. 5 women, she said quietly. All former assistants or girlfriends of Julian Pierce, all with similar stories, and all too terrified to come forward. Harper opened the folder, her heart sinking as she read. The pattern was clear: young, ambitious women drawn into Julian's orbit, isolated from friends and family, then controlled through a combination of career opportunities and subtle threats. This one, Lila pointed to a photo of a woman with haunting eyes, Sophie Bennett. She was his assistant 3 years ago. Now she's working at a women's shelter in Boston, helping others escape exactly what she went through. Have you contacted her? She's willing to talk, but only in person and only to you. Harper checked her watch. The morning sun was just starting to paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and promise. Book me on the next train to Boston. Already did. Lila handed her a ticket. But girl, you need to tell him. As if summoned by their conversation, Harper's phone lit up with Gideon's name. Her heart did that familiar flip it, always did now, even as worry gnawed at her stomach. Good morning. His voice was warm through the speaker. Have you seen today's stock reports? No. I've been focused on other research. A pause. The Serena situation, Gideon. Harper closed her eyes, gathering courage. I'm going to Boston today. There's someone I need to talk to about Julian. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken concern. Let me send security with you. That would only draw attention. I need to do this quietly. Harper, his voice dropped lower. Intense. Julian's been watching your apartment. My team spotted his car there last night. A chill ran down her spine, but she forced her voice to stay steady. All the more reason to move quickly. The engagement announcement is buying us time, but Serena's running out of it. At least let me have the company jet ready. If anything feels wrong, I'll call. I promise. She softened her tone. Trust me, Gideon. This is what I do. I help people escape men like him. I do trust you. The words carried weight beyond their simple meaning. Just come back to me. The raw emotion in his voice made her breath catch. Always. 4 hours later, Harper sat in a quiet Boston cafe, watching Sophie Bennett stir her untouched tea. The woman was elegant but tense, like a deer ready to bolt. He's smarter now, Sophie said. Finally, her voice barely above a whisper. With me, he was still learning his technique. The physical bruises, they were too obvious. Now he leaves marks no one can see. The evidence you kept, Harper leaned forward. Would you be willing to share it? Sophie's hands trembled. He'll know it was me. No, he won't. Because we're not just building a case against him, we're building a movement. Harper pulled out her phone, showing Sophie the private social media group they'd created. Look how many women have already joined, all sharing similar stories, but none have gone public. They will, together. Strength in numbers, Sophie. He can't silence us all. Before Sophie could respond, Harper's phone buzzed with an urgent text from Lila, 911. Serena, in hospital. Accident at Pierce Tower. I have to go. Harper stood quickly. But Sophie, think about what I said. You're not alone anymore. The train ride back to New York was agony. Every minute felt like an hour, as Harper coordinated with Lila, women's advocacy groups, and Gideon's legal team. By the time she reached Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital, a plan was forming. She found Serena in a private room, her elegant features marred by a fall that had left suspicious bruises. Julian had already spun the story to the press, a tragic accident. His beloved fiancée tripping on stairs in her high heels. He knows, Serena whispered when they were alone. About our meeting. About everything. He said no one would believe me now after the engagement announcement. He's wrong. Harper took her hand gently. Look at your phone. Serena's eyes widened as she scrolled through the private group. Dozens of women, all sharing pieces of the same nightmare, all ready to stand together. It's not just about Grayson Enterprises anymore, Harper explained. This is about stopping him permanently. Miss Cole. Julian's voice cut through the room like ice. He stood in the doorway, impeccable in a designer suit, They couldn't quite hide the predator beneath. Visiting hours are over. Actually, a new voice joined them. They're not. Gideon filled the doorway behind Julian, and he wasn't alone. Eleanor Langston stood with him, along with a woman Harper recognized from the photos, another of Julian's previous assistants. "Hello, Julian." The woman's voice was steel. "Remember me?" Color drained from his face. "What is this?" "This," Harper stood, moving protectively in front of Serena's bed, "is what happens when you underestimate women who've had enough. You're making a mistake, all of you." Julian's charm vanished, replaced by something dark and ugly. "I'll destroy." "No." Eleanor's voice cut like a blade. "You won't. Because in about 30 seconds, every major news outlet will receive evidence of your pattern of abuse, financial manipulation, and corporate espionage. Your empire is built on sand, Julian, and the tide just came in." As if on cue, phones throughout the hospital began buzzing. The story was breaking, and this time, there would be no spinning it away. "Security will escort you out," Gideon said quietly. "I suggest you go quietly. Your lawyers will be busy enough as it is." Later, in Gideon's penthouse, Harper watched the news coverage with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Women across the country were coming forward, sharing their stories of survival. "You did it," Gideon murmured, pulling her close. "We did it." She turned in his arms. "All those women, they just needed to know they weren't alone. Like someone else I know." His eyes held hers, full of pride and something deeper. "You know, when I first made that contract offer, I thought I was the one with all the power." Harper smiled, reaching up to touch his face. "And now? Now I know that real power isn't about money or control." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "It's about having the courage to stand up for what's right. You taught me that." Outside, the city hummed with energy as the biggest scandal in recent memory unfolded. But here, in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the way Gideon looked at her, not as an investment or an asset, but as an equal, a partner, someone who had challenged everything he thought he knew about power and love. "Stay," he whispered against her hair. This time, Harper didn't hesitate. Sometimes the greatest victories weren't about winning games or making deals. Sometimes they were about finding the courage to let yourself fall, knowing someone would be there to catch you. And sometimes, just sometimes, love was the most powerful contract of all. Autumn painted Central Park in shades of gold and crimson as Harper walked its winding paths, her hand intertwined with Gideon's. 3 months had passed since Julian's empire had crumbled, and the world felt different now, softer around the edges, yet somehow more real than ever. "Still nervous?" Gideon asked, squeezing her hand gently. "About opening the community center?" "Terrified." She smiled up at him, but the good kind of terrified. Tomorrow would mark the official opening of the Cole Community Center. What had started as a desperate dream now stood as a beacon of hope in Brooklyn, a modern facility offering everything from after-school programs to job training, counseling services to adult education. "You know," Gideon mused, guiding her toward their favorite bench, overlooking the lake. "When I first offered you that contract, I thought I was the one in control. And now?" Harper raised an eyebrow, enjoying the way sunlight caught the gold threads in his hair. "Now I know that some things can't be bought or controlled." He turned to face her, his gray-blue eyes intense. "Some things can only be earned." A cool breeze carried the scent of his oud wood cologne, mixing with her Coco Mademoiselle in the autumn air. So much had changed since that first meeting in his office, yet their signature scents remained a constant in a world of transformation. "Have you heard from Serena?" she asked, watching leaves dance across the path. "She's doing well in California. The women's advocacy group she started is gaining national attention." Pride colored his voice. "The foundation grant will help them expand to 3 more cities next year." The Grayson Cole Foundation had been Gideon's idea, a way to systematically support survivors of domestic abuse while funding community development projects. It was also his way of ensuring that what happened to Julian's victims would never happen again. And Julian? The name no longer carried the weight it once did. Still fighting charges in 3 states. Gideon's jaw tightened slightly, but with the evidence Sophie and the others provided, he won't be walking away this time. They sat in comfortable silence, watching young couples' rowboats across the lake. Harper thought about all the lives that had changed in the past few months, not just hers and Gideon's, but Serena's, Sophie's, and countless others who had found their voice. Lila says the center already has a waiting list for programs, she said finally. We might need to expand sooner than we thought. Already taken care of. Gideon pulled out his phone, showing her blueprints for the building next door. The purchase goes through next week. Consider it an early Christmas present. Harper stared at him, emotion tightening her throat. You can't just buy buildings without consulting. Actually, I can. His eyes twinkled. But only because I know you'll put them to better use than I ever could. You're impossible. But she was smiling as she said it. I prefer strategically generous. He tucked a stray curl behind her ear, his touch lingering. Speaking of strategy, move in with me. The words hung in the crisp autumn air. They'd been dancing around this conversation for weeks, both knowing it was coming, but neither wanting to rush. Your penthouse is beautiful, Harper said carefully, but it's not home. I know. Gideon reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out another set of blueprints. That's why I bought us a brownstone in Brooklyn, walking distance from the center. Plenty of room for your mother's jazz collection and my ridiculous wine cellar. Harper's heart skipped. You'd leave Manhattan? I'd follow you anywhere. The simple honesty in his voice made her breath catch, but preferably somewhere within reasonable commuting distance of the office. She laughed, the sound bright in the autumn air. Always the pragmatist. Only about some things. He pulled her closer, his warmth chasing away the October chill. About others, I've learned to let my heart lead. A group of children ran past their bench, chasing fallen leaves and dreams only they could see. Harper watched them, thinking of the kids who would find new opportunities at the center. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it, the brownstone, living together, building something real. She turned to face him fully. But I have conditions. A smile tugged at his lips. Of course you do. I keep my apartment above the center for late nights. The foundation expands its youth programs, and she paused, gathering courage. You have to dance with me at the opening ceremony tomorrow, even though I know you hate dancing in public. Even though. He studied her face, love and amusement mingling in his expression. Counteroffer. I dance with you tomorrow, but you have to attend the Grayson Enterprises holiday gala, as my date no contract required. Deal. She sealed it with a kiss that tasted of possibility and promise. Later that evening, as they walked through their soon-to-be home, Harper marveled at how perfectly the space balanced their different worlds. The modern kitchen would satisfy Gideon's culinary perfectionism, while the cozy library seemed designed for her late-night reading habits. One more surprise, Gideon said, leading her to what would be their bedroom. Look up. The ceiling was a masterpiece of fiber optic lights, creating a perfect replica of the night sky. For when you miss stargazing in Brooklyn, he explained softly. Emotion closed her throat. He'd remembered a throwaway comment from months ago about how she used to watch stars with her mother on their tiny apartment roof. I love you, she said, the words falling naturally from her lips. He stilled beside her, then pulled her into his arms. Say it again. I love you, Gideon Grayson. She smiled against his chest. Even when you're impossible. Especially then, he murmured into her hair. I love you too, Harper Cole, even when you're making me dance in public. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with its usual energy sirens and laughter, dreams and determination. But here, in this moment, they had created their own world, a world where contracts had transformed into promises, where power meant having the strength to be vulnerable, and where love wasn't a transaction but a gift freely given and gratefully received. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dreams to chase. But tonight, watching artificial stars twinkle above them, Harper and Gideon had found something better than success. They had found home. The Cole Community Center gleamed in the morning sun, its renovated facade a testament to dreams made real. Harper stood in her new office, watching families stream through the doors for the grand opening. Children's laughter echoed through the halls, mixing with the excited chatter of parents and community members. Everything's ready, Lila announced, appearing in the doorway. Though I still can't believe you convinced Gideon Grayson to cut the ribbon in Brooklyn instead of having some fancy Manhattan ceremony. Harper smiled, adjusting her navy blazer, the same one she'd worn to that first meeting in his office, now feeling like a lifetime ago. He's full of surprises. Speaking of surprises, Lila handed her a small velvet box. This was just delivered. The card says, "For new beginnings." Inside, nestled on black silk, lay a delicate gold necklace with a single perfect star pendant. Harper's heart squeezed as she read the note in Gideon's elegant handwriting, because you taught me to reach for the stars, even when they seemed impossible to grasp. A knock at the door interrupted her moment of emotion. Eleanor Langston stood there, elegant as ever in Chanel. "The press is ready, dear, and you won't believe who just arrived." Harper followed Eleanor to the main hall, where Serena Holt was greeting a group of women, all survivors, all standing tall. The former assistant had transformed in the months since leaving Julian. California sunshine had given her a healthy glow, and her eyes held a confidence that no designer clothes could buy. "I wouldn't have missed this," Serena said, hugging Harper tightly. "Our Foundation's West Coast chapter opens next month. Full circle." The crowd parted, and Harper's breath caught. Gideon stood at the entrance, devastating in a perfectly tailored suit, but it was his expression that made her heart race. He looked at her the way dreamers looked at stars, with wonder, with certainty, with love. "Ready?" he asked softly when she reached him. "For a ribbon cutting? I think I can handle that. Not just the ribbon cutting." He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "For everything that comes after." The ceremony itself passed in a blur of speeches and applause. Harper spoke about community, about hope, about the power of believing in something bigger than yourself. Gideon talked about investment in people, not just profits, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had learned that lesson firsthand. But it was the children's faces that Harper would remember most, their eyes wide with possibility as they explored the computer lab, the art studio, the library filled with books and dreams. "Miss Cole?" A small voice caught her attention. A girl, no more than 12, held out a handmade card. "Thank you for building this place. Mom says it means I can stay in the science program after school now." Harper knelt to the girl's level, emotion tightening her throat. "What's your name, Amara?" "Well, Amara, I think you're going to do amazing things." She glanced up to find Gideon watching them, his eyes soft. "Sometimes all we need is a chance to prove what we're capable of." The afternoon flowed into evening, and the center hummed with activity. Community leaders mingled with corporate donors. Social workers chatted with educators. Through it all, a sense of possibility filled the air. In a quiet moment, Harper slipped away to the rooftop garden, her favorite part of the renovation. The Brooklyn skyline spread before her, a tapestry of lights and dreams. "I thought I'd find you here." Gideon's voice was warm behind her. "Hiding from your own success? Not hiding." She turned to face him. "Just remembering the night you came to my office, the night I learned that some things are worth more than pride." She touched the star pendant at her throat. "Some things are worth risking everything for." He moved closer, his cologne wrapping around her like a promise. "I have something to ask you. If it's about the holiday gala, I already picked out my dress. Not about the gala." His eyes held hers, serious now. "About forever." Time seemed to stop as he reached into his pocket, drawing out a small box that made her heart skip. The ring inside was perfect, a stunning star sapphire, surrounded by diamonds, unique and breathtaking. "I had this whole speech prepared," he said softly, "about how you turned my world upside down, how you made me question everything I thought I knew about power and success. But standing here, seeing everything you've built, everything you are," he took a shaky breath, "the only words that matter are, I love you, Harper Cole. Marry me." Below them, the city pulsed with life. Inside the center, children laughed and dreams took root. And here, under a sky turning purple with twilight, Harper looked at the man who had tried to buy her time and ended up giving her his heart instead. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. The kiss was sweet and sure, tasting of promise and possibility. When they parted, Gideon rested his forehead against hers. "Dance with me. Here now, why not?" He pulled her close as music drifted up from the celebration below. "We've never been good at following conventional rules anyway." They swayed together under the emerging stars, their story coming full circle on a Brooklyn rooftop. No contracts, no pretense, no games, just two people who had found something real in a world of transactions and deals. "Mrs. Langston is already planning the wedding, isn't she?" Harper murmured against his chest. "Probably. But we could always elope." She laughed, the sound pure joy. "Gideon Grayson suggesting something spontaneous? Who are you? And what have you done with my fiancé?" "Your fiancé," he repeated, as if tasting the words. "I like how that sounds almost as much as I'm going to like calling you my wife." Later that night, they walked through their brownstone, still full of moving boxes and possibility. Harper's jazz collection had found a home next to Gideon's wine cellar. Their books mingled on shelves, and their dreams intertwined, like the stars glittering on their bedroom ceiling. "You know," Gideon said as they lay together, watching artificial constellations dance above them, "that first contract was the best mistake I ever made." "Mistake?" She propped herself up to look at him. "I thought I was buying time with a fascinating woman." His fingers traced patterns on her skin. "Instead, I found the rest of my life." Harper kissed him softly, knowing that some things couldn't be captured in words, some things could only be felt, lived, treasured. Outside, Brooklyn dreamed its endless dreams. Inside, two people who had started as business opponents had become partners in every way that mattered. And somewhere, in an office that started it all, a contract lay forgotten in a drawer, replaced by something far more valuable, a love story written in starlight and trust, in courage and choice, in the power of two hearts finding their way home. 1 year later, the Grayson Cole Foundation's annual gala had a different energy than the corporate events Harper once dreaded. Children's artwork decorated the Metropolitan Museum's walls, displayed alongside priceless masterpieces. The guest list included not just New York's elite, but community leaders, educators, and survivors who had become advocates. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Lila asked, adjusting her emerald gown as they watched Gideon chat with a group of donors. He caught Harper's eye across the room, that private smile still making her heart skip. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday." Harper touched her star sapphire wedding ring, remembering their intimate ceremony in the community center's rooftop garden 6 months ago. "Other times, it's like I've known him forever." The foundation had expanded beyond their wildest dreams, with centers now operating in 5 cities. Serena ran the West Coast division, turning her experience into a force for change. The newest project, a scholarship program for survivors' children, had launched last month to overwhelming support. "Miss S. Grayson?" A familiar small voice interrupted her thoughts. Amara, the young girl from the center's opening, now stood taller in a pretty blue dress. "I got accepted into the Science Magnet program." Harper hugged her tightly. "That's wonderful, though you should still call me Harper Old Habits." Amara grinned. "Mr. Grayson says I might be running the foundation someday." He's probably right. Later that night, Harper and Gideon danced under the museum's soaring ceiling. His oud wood cologne mingled with her Coco Mademoiselle, their signature scents now a comfort rather than a challenge. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. She smiled against his chest. "Though we should tell them soon." His hand drifted to her stomach, still flat, but harboring their newest dream. "Tomorrow. Tonight is about celebrating how far we've come." Above them, through the museum's glass ceiling, real stars twinkled, witnesses to a love story that began with a contract and ended with forever. Some deals, after all, were written in the stars. The end. If I were in Harper's shoes, faced with the moral dilemma of accepting Gideon's $1 million contract to fake a relationship, I'd wrestle with the same tension she did, personal integrity versus the chance to make a tangible difference. On one hand, my principles would scream against commodifying myself. It feels like a betrayal of authenticity, turning something as personal as a relationship into a transaction. I'd worry about the precedent it sets, not just for me, but for how others perceive my values. Could I look myself in the mirror knowing I'd bent my ethics, even for a good cause? On the other hand, the stakes are impossibly high. $5 million cent pocket change. It's a lifeline for dozens of underprivileged kids who'd get a safe space, education, and opportunities they might never otherwise have. In social work, you learn fast that pride doesn't fill empty stomachs or heal broken homes. The pragmatic side of me would argue that one night of discomfort could outweigh years of struggle, that the ends might justify the means when the impact is this real. I'd probably agonize over it until the deadline, but I think I'd take the deal like Harper did, because the chance to change lives outweighs the temporary sting to my ego. Integrity matters, but it's not absolute. It's a tool, not a shackle. I'd make damn sure the money went straight to the kids, no loopholes, and I'd set clear boundaries like she did. But I'd also carry the weight of that choice, knowing it's a gray area where principle and purpose collide. What's worth more? For me, it's the kids' futures, but I'd never pretend it's an easy call. What about you? Where would you land?